last lesson, I introduced you to conditionals. You learned how to talk about certain types of hypothetical situations, the what-ifs of the world. You learned how to talk about what might happen, but hasn't happened yet. We started by exploring the type 0 conditional, which is used to talk about facts. For example, if you touch a hot stove top, you burn. It's a fact. There is no doubt about it. Next, we explored the type 1 conditional. This conditional sentence structure is used to talk about hypothetical situations where the condition is possible and the result is likely. For example, if it rains, I will stay inside. These sentence structures are extremely useful because, as you know, many people like to talk about hypothetical situations. It is part of everyday conversations. Additionally, it's very, very useful to know how to make a wide range of sentence types confidently, accurately, and correctly. This is because, as you already know, in your IELTS tests, your examiners will test your ability to construct many different types of sentences. So, if you can demonstrate your ability to create a wide variety of sentence types, you will instantly increase your chances of getting a high score. There are some more conditional sentence structures that we will be learning about in this lesson and in the next lesson. I hope you are excited to expand your knowledge of conditional sentence structures even more. Our objectives for this lesson are as follows. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to use the type 2 conditional sentence structure, and you'll be able to use the type 3 conditional sentence structure. Lastly, you'll be able to understand the appropriate contexts in which each of the above is used, because as you know, context is extremely important. But as usual, before we get into this lesson, we're going to look at your Lesson 1 challenge. We do this because we need to consolidate your knowledge and see if you are on the right track. It's important to test whether or not you fully understand a concept, because if you don't do this, you won't know what you need to improve on. So, in the last lesson, I challenged you to write appropriate conditional sentences to answer the following questions. What if you don't drink enough water? What if you study hard for your test next week? This challenge was designed to help you not only to practice your conditional sentence structures, but also to see whether you understand which structure is used for which type of hypothetical situation. Let's see how you did. Let's start with the first sentence. What if you don't drink enough water? But first, I want to ask you, will this be a type 0 or type 1 conditional sentence? Think about it. Will the result be a known fact or simply a likely outcome? Well, I would say that all people will have the same response to not drinking enough water. There is no human being on the planet who will survive or be healthy if they don't drink enough water. So the result or outcome of not drinking enough water will be a known fact. There will be little to no doubt about it. So it must be a type 0 conditional sentence. Now, what happens when you don't drink enough water? Well, I think we all know, but there are a few ways to word it. I would say that you become dehydrated when you don't drink enough water. That is the result. And as you probably know, the condition is you don't drink enough water. Now, let's talk about the tenses. In what tense is the condition? It's in present simple tense. And in what tense is the result? It's also in present simple tense. As you learned in the last lesson, this is the rule for type 0 conditional sentences. Both the condition and the result are in present simple tense. That's because we usually use present simple tense to talk about facts. So let's go ahead and make the sentence. So we've got the condition, you don't drink enough water, and the result, you become dehydrated. Do you remember what we need to add first? It's the word if. If shows that X depends on Y. In other words, it shows that the result depends on the condition. Becoming dehydrated depends on not drinking enough water. Great. Now, what do we add next? We add the comma. The comma separates the clauses. Also, remember that the tense is present simple for both clauses, because that's the rule for 0 conditionals. Great. So that is our sentence. Did you get it right? Let's look at the next question. What if you study hard for your test next week? Now, let me ask you again, would the answer to this question be in the type 0 or type 1 conditional sentence structure? Would the result of studying hard for your test be a known fact or just a likely outcome? Well, although it's highly likely that if you study hard for your test, you'll probably pass, it's not a known fact. Anything could happen. So, in that case, it can't be 0 conditional because the result isn't a known fact. The result is only likely, not certain. So, this would be a type 1 conditional sentence. So, we've got our condition, you study hard for your test next week, and our result, you will pass. What is the tense of the condition? It's present simple tense. What is the tense of the result? It's future simple tense. And that is the rule for the type 1 conditional sentence. The condition is always in present simple tense, and the result is always in future simple tense. So let's make the sentence. We've got our condition and our result. What is the first thing we need to add again? It's the word if. As you know, the word if shows that the result depends on the outcome. Next, we add the comma. What does the comma do again? It separates the clauses. And remember, the condition is in present simple tense and the result is in future simple tense. That is the rule for type if. Let's start with a quick recap. What is a hypothetical situation? Do you remember? Well, the Collins Dictionary says that if something is hypothetical, it is based on possible ideas or situations rather than actual ones. So hypothetical situations are possible events. They haven't happened yet and they might never happen at all. But sometimes we want to talk about possibilities. In the last lesson, we explored the first 2 ways to talk about possible events. And now we're going to look at 2 more. Remember, there's not just one structure that we use to talk about hypothetical situations. Each type of hypothetical situation has a different conditional sentence structure. There are 5 types of conditional sentence structures. We've got type 0 conditional, which we learned about in the last lesson. We've got the type 1 conditional, which we also learned about. Then we've got the type 2 and type 3 conditionals, and we've got the mixed conditional. Today we're going to look at the type 2 conditional and the type 3 conditional. But first, let's recap the concepts of condition and result. We'll recap these concepts by having a quick trivia session. In the following sentences, which one is the condition and which one is the result? Kathy forgot the cake in the oven. The cake burns. I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. The condition is Kathy forgot the cake in the oven. That's because forgetting the cake in the oven causes something else to happen. It causes the cake to burn. It has the power to change the situation or outcome. Therefore, it's the condition. The result is the cake burns. That's because it's the outcome of the situation. It's what happens because of the condition. Now that we're on the same page, let's talk about the type 2 conditional. This is the next conditional sentence structure you'll be learning. Look at the picture. Based on the picture, can you guess when we use type 2 conditionals? Well, this man seems to have acquired a lot of money. Wouldn't you also like to get lots of money? It's a hypothetical situation that we all wish could happen to us. But is it likely? Not really. So we use type 2 conditionals when the condition is unlikely. For example, winning the lottery. This is something that would make you very rich very quickly, and I'm sure you can imagine all the things you would do with that money. But is it likely that you'd win the lottery? No. So, therefore, when talking about what you'd do if you won the lottery, you would use the type 2 conditional sentence structure. So, what would you do? Would you buy a car? Would you start a charity? Would you pay your debt? Another example is becoming president. It's quite unlikely that your average person would become president. So, if you want to talk about what you would do if you became president, you'd use the type 2 conditional sentence structure. So, what would you do if you became president? So, let's talk about winning the lottery. I won the lottery. Is this the condition or the result? Think about it. Is it causing something to happen, or is it the outcome of something? It's causing something else to happen. It's the condition. And we know that with type 2 conditionals, the condition is unlikely. So, of course, that means that I would buy a car is the result, because it is the outcome of winning the lottery. Now, of course, we need to talk about tenses. In what tense is the condition? I won the lottery. It's in past simple tense. What about the result? What's going on there? Well, it looks like we've got the word would plus the base form of the verb. The base form is the simplest form of the verb. So, let's make a sentence. We've got the condition and the result. What do we need to add? The word if. You already know why. it shows that the result depends on the condition. Now, what's next? It's the comma. The comma separates the clauses. And the important rule for type 2 conditionals is that you need to remember that the condition is in past simple tense, and the results form would be would plus the base form of the verb. Here is a formula you can use to remember the type 2 conditional. If plus the condition in past simple tense plus the comma plus the result in the following form, would plus the base form of the verb. For example, if I became president, I would give everyone free cake. Let's practice the type 2 conditional. What if you saw a ghost? Seeing a ghost is quite an unlikely condition. So, of course, we'd use the type 2 conditional to answer this question. I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. Now, there are a few possible results of seeing a ghost. If I saw a ghost, I'd scream. Do you see the contraction in the sentence? I combined the words I and would to create the word I'd. That's a contraction. We use contractions to make speaking easier. For the next practice round, let's consider another unlikely hypothetical situation. What if you became president? Answer the question using the type 2 conditional. Think about it. What would you do? I'll give you a few seconds to construct a sentence. In my case, if I became president, I'd give poor people homes. What about you? Did you get the sentence structure right? For the last practice round, we'll consider the following unlikely hypothetical situation. What if you had lots of money? Use the type 2 conditional sentence structure. Think about it. I'll give you some time to construct a sentence. In my case, if I had lots of money, I'd start a charity. What about you? And did you get the sentence structure right this time? Now, there is another form of the type 2 conditional. You'll remember from the last lesson that the conditional sentence structures can usually be shifted around. When they are shifted around in this way, they still have the same meaning. But you need to pay attention to the grammatical rules. Look at this form of the type 2 conditional. I'd buy a car if I won the lottery. What happened to the sentence? Well, the condition and the result changed places. The comma is gone. If moved to the middle of the sentence, because if is always before the condition. Let's take a quick break to talk about what you can expect in Lesson 3. We will explore the last conditional sentence structure, mixed conditional. The lesson will complete your knowledge of conditionals, plus give you an opportunity to practice and recap what you have learned. You will leave Lesson 3 with a much better understanding of conditional sentence structures and when to use what conditional sentence type. Now it's time to talk about the next type of conditional, the type 3 conditional. This is the last conditional sentence type we'll be looking at in this lesson. Look at the picture on the screen. Does the person in the picture look happy? Well, she looks like she might be a little sad, maybe even regretful. If you regret something, it means that you wish you had done something in the past differently. We use type 3 conditionals to talk about a hypothetical past situation. Note the word past. The hypothetical situation has to be in the past in order for it to be the type 3 conditional sentence type. Sometimes the type 3 conditional sentence type is used to express regret about something that happened in the past. Now, this isn't always the case, but it is very common. Let's look at an example. Johnny failed his test. What if he had studied harder? Well, he probably would have passed if he had studied harder. So, first we've got John had studied harder. Is this the condition or the result? Is it about the outcome or the cause of a situation? It's the cause, so it must be the condition. So that means that he would have passed his test must be the result. That's because passing the test is the outcome of studying harder. It's directly affected by the condition. Now let's talk about tenses. In what tense is the condition? It's in past perfect tense. And what about the result? It looks like the form is would plus the present perfect tense form of the verb. Remember that when we use perfect tenses, irregular verbs play an important role. If you need a recap on the concept of irregular verbs and verb 1, verb 2 and verb 3, you can refer back to Module 1, Lesson 6, bonus lesson, or the summary notes. Now let's make a sentence in type 3 conditional. We've got the condition and the result. What do we need to add first? By now, I'm sure you know that we need to add if before the condition. If shows that X depends on Y. Now, what do we add next? The comma. That's because the comma separates the clauses. Then remember that the condition is in past perfect tense and the results form is would plus the present perfect form of the verb. Can you imagine what the type 3 conditional formula would be? It's if plus the condition in past perfect tense plus the comma plus the result in the form would plus the present perfect form of the verb. For example, if I had gone out in the cold, I would have become sick. Now, of course, it's time to practice. Sally didn't buy her favorite shoes yesterday because she forgot her wallet at home. What if she hadn't forgotten her wallet? Answer the question using the type 3 conditional sentence structure. I'll give you some time to think about it. If Sally hadn't forgotten her wallet, she would have bought her favorite shoes. Now let's look at another scenario. Jane got sunburnt yesterday. What if she had used sunscreen? Answer the question using the type 3 conditional sentence structure. Take a moment to think about it. I'd say that if Jane had used sunscreen, she wouldn't have gotten sunburnt. Let's have one more practice round. Alex got stuck in traffic yesterday. What if he had taken the train? Answer the question using the type 3 conditional sentence structure. I'll give you a moment. Alex had taken the train, he wouldn't have gotten stuck in traffic. Did you get the sentence structures right? Now, as you know, each conditional can be rearranged into another form. Look at the following alternative form of the type 3 conditional. Johnny would have passed his test if he had studied harder. What happened to the sentence? Well, the condition and result changed places. The comma is gone, and if is no longer at the beginning of the sentence. So let's quickly recap what we learned today. Let's start with the type 2 conditional. When do we use the type 2 conditional again? We use it when the condition is unlikely, such as winning the lottery. What is the formula? The formula is if plus the condition in past simple tense plus the comma plus the result in the form would plus the base form of the verb. Next, let's recap the type 3 conditional. When do we use it again? We use it when we talk about hypothetical past situations, sometimes even when we feel regret. Now, what is the formula for the type 3 conditional again? The formula is if plus the condition in past perfect tense plus the comma plus the result in the form would plus the present perfect tense form of the verb. Remember that if always goes before the condition. Now you are even more equipped to talk about situations that may be or could have been. Because I'm sure you know how important it is to be able to have such conversations. You have once again upskilled yourself and compounded your sentence structure repertoire. You now have 2 added sentence structures to add to your list of skills. Well done for making it this far. I hope you're looking forward to learning about the last type of conditional sentence structure in Lesson 3. After Lesson 3, your knowledge of conditionals will be complete, which is a very exciting prospect. And after that, there are many more writing, speaking, and listening skills you will acquire in this course. I hope you are excited to reach your highest potential.